back again from Egypt. We broadcast to you our Money Means Business, and our guest is Dr. Ibrahim Fawzy, Professor of Engineering, former Minister of Industry, and the Chairman of the Investment Authority. Welcome again, sir, with us.
Thank you.
Well, we've talked in my short and brief introduction. Well, Egypt is like trying to focus on many areas now with the new leadership and new government after a turbulent period of time. There is a lot to do there. There are meetings that President Sisi is going to meet. He went to Kuwait, he went to China, he went to Italy, and he met people and authorities in order to boost investment, in order to solve so many problems in Egypt, to get help and cooperate with these countries. Different problems are being tackled at the same time. Some people, well, we had problems, and we have problems like, you know, in Kuwait, for example, they just talked about being, they were welcoming and helping Egypt, but then, for example, some of the things here talking about is like, one of the companies that owned by Kuwaiti investors stated, for example, the land is, you know, that they got is cannot be cultivated because the Egyptian government, for example, did not provide them with the water necessary as agreed upon. We talk about here. We talk about a new package of investment laws or amendments in the investment laws. I don't know which should be done. You're an expert on that. You know, you've been a minister of industry. You know the inner circles and how, you know, things happen there. You know, so would you please just give us a briefing on how you see things? You know, and the developments taking place on the local scene. And I know that you cannot be very happy, or now many people are just kind of like very kind of reserved. They cannot really, they just want to see more before they just feel so optimistic, or just, you know, they just don't, they're not joyful just like that. They just have to, they're meticulous about the outcome of things. So how do you see things in the future?
Well, I think it's very clear to everyone that there is a strong wind of optimism flowing everywhere, and it has been reflected in the visits by President Sisi, in the attitude of foreign governments,
yeah,
in the actions of some of the evaluation firms, raising the credibility of Egypt to higher levels.
Yes.
And also in the visits of several groups of companies coming to Egypt.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, there is a group of companies coming from Britain,
yes,
with their accompanying Minister of Middle East, Tobias Elwood.
yeah,
And the week after, there is a delegation from Japan with the Prime Minister of Japan. And this cannot be all happening from nothing.
yeah.
So there are expectations, and people are again considering Egypt to be their destination. Everyone inside and outside Egypt is looking to Egypt again after Egypt has been almost dismissed during the era of the Muslim Brotherhood. There are some problems, the security, terrorism, but we have seen that terrorism hits in other countries like France. So this, I think, will help Egypt to say that what's happening on the Egyptian soil is happening everywhere else, so it cannot be a serious factor. But what I am worried about is that when the expectation is high, then the deliverables must meet the expectations. If people who are full of optimism,
yes,
and hope come to Egypt, and then they are not finding what they expect,
yes,
then there will be frustration.
yes,
And if we lose this era of optimism,
yes,
or this wind of optimism,
yes,
we may not get it again.
yeah,
For this reason, I think that the government must really do a lot more to show that it has actually done things, not just talked about things. What we are seeing now is a lot of talk. Everyone responsible in the government is
yes,
talking about things that will happen, things that are planned to happen. But there are also things that can be talked about as if they have actually happened.
Yes.
People have been expecting, for example, some modification of the law of investment or new law for the last 3 or 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Why did it take that long? I mean, this could be just given to the people and declared so that people who will come in the conference of March know where we stand.
Yes.
People are still worried about the energy problem.
Yeah.
Will Egypt have enough energy next summer, or will there be some interruptions,
Yes.
some cut-off? Will investors get the guarantee which they want for their new companies? They want to invest in electricity. And these things keep being postponed. And this, in my opinion, is not a good thing, and it can backlash by a negative effect that we may not be able to overcome.
Yes. So we've got phone on line Mr. Nabil Fadl, member of the Kuwaiti Parliament. Hello, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. We were just talking about investments in Kuwait and I mean Kuwait investments in Egypt, and some of the pieces of news talk about dissatisfaction of some companies, you know, with some kind of let's say, you know, like not providing what the investors exactly need. How is the situation in your opinion, and how do you see the Kuwaiti investments in Egypt?
Kuwaiti investment in Egypt is very old. It's over more than 60 years old. I said 60 years. Kuwaiti businessmen have been investing in Egypt. There was a big breakthrough during the reign of President Mubarak, but the inherited administrative bureaucracy has always been a problem for investors, whether the Kuwaitis or others. And although they tried very hard to change it and modernize it, it remains there. I mean, the bad habits die hard, as they say. And accordingly, the investors, Kuwaitis and others, have still been facing some problems with the administrative bureaucracy in Egypt.
Yes.
And that had moved. I mean, during the reign of President Hasni, had improved a lot, but not to the full satisfaction, or not as good as investments in other countries. We believe that at the reign of President Sisi, things will improve even better, and even during his talks with the Chamber of Commerce in here, and the business people, the representatives, he promised to move things forward as far as the administration and the legislation for the foreign investment. If that's done, Egypt is a fantastic country for investment. There is a lot of things to be done.
Yes.
There is a huge room for improvement. And accordingly, the returns on investment should be quite satisfactory. In addition, of course, to the emotional part. A Kuwaiti investor would rather go invest his money in Egypt rather than anywhere else because of the emotional feelings towards Egypt and the Egyptian people.
Yes.
So I think it is moving in the right direction, hopefully. It's going to take time, no doubt, but the bases are there.
Mr. Nabil Fadl, thank you very much for being with us. Here with us, Mr. Nabil Fadl, member of the Kuwaiti Parliament. Any comments?
No, I agree with what he has said. The bureaucracy in Egypt
Yes.
is rather heavy, but I hope that this bureaucracy can also be appreciated, because Egypt is an old country, and the bureaucracy has been accumulated over several decades, and a piece of legislation which can be good for some types of investors could hit some other areas in the society. So it's not that easy to get rid of the bureaucracy. But what we want is some transparency, some promise, or some satisfaction, or no, fulfillment
Yes.
of what is being promised by the government.
Yes.
And if there is a problem, then it can be solved. Investors face problems everywhere. I mean, Egypt is not a unique country in this. In Egypt here, we face some problems from European companies which come to execute some projects, and they never get their projects or their assignments to the satisfaction. So the problems can be solved. But what I want to stress is that investors from Kuwait and the Arab countries have an interest in not only investing in Egypt because of the money or because of the emotion, but they must be tied to Egypt for the better future of Egypt and also of Kuwait and the Gulf and the Arab countries. We are seeing now what is happening in the area because of Daesh in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, and quite frankly, the only army in the region which can really protect any part of the Arab world, and this has been declared by President Sisi, is the Egyptian army.
True.
And the Egyptian army cannot be strong enough and confident enough unless the economic scene in Egypt is really satisfactory to the Egyptians. So Arab investors, Kuwaiti investors, Emirates, Saudi investors have an interest in making Egypt strong,
Yes.
both politically, economically,